Hello, this is Professor Gibbons, and this video is a short video tutorial on explanatory synthesis. So let's have a look at this. What is this explanatory synthesis that the book talks about in Chapter 3? It's an accurate report of the information taken from more than one source. So in order to do synthesis, you have to have two sources at least. And if you look at the upcoming assignments, I allow more than that, but two is the minimum. So it's used to communicate the overlapping ideas in more than one source. So obviously, if you have to have overlapping ideas, this means that the sources that you choose have to have something in common. They can't be on vaccines and environmental issues. So it helps the reader to understand the sources better by providing an in-depth overview. And whereas you might go top to bottom from thesis to information in a regular research paper, in explanatory synthesis, your whole thesis revolves around your research. So it's a little bit different way of thinking. So ultimately, the writer explores and describes the obvious as well as the subtle ideas. So you may come out finding things that are new from both sources. You might realize that something can be done about an issue, or you might realize that there's a new idea here that's popped up where you've looked at both of your articles and found this, new idea. And sometimes that happens when you're looking at different articles and different author views of things. So this one, up until now, like I said in one of the other videos that you're going to watch, you've summarized, and by the time that you actually do your synthesis, you've also done a critique, and those are both very important skills to be able to do synthesis. So you have to be able to understand your article and summarize it before you can use that in a synthesis essay, and you also have to understand the article by examining the topics and ideas in those articles in a very critical sense, and making sure that they're valid ideas that you can use. So synthesis is bringing together materials from more than one source to create something new. So let's look at some examples. This one is interesting. A doctor saying, you listen to me. So it involves the use of two or more sources, all written on the same topic. According to Barron and Rawson, your job in writing an explanatory paper is not to argue a particular point, but rather to present the facts in a reasonably objective manner, rather than very biased. So this one may be offensive to people, but I found it really interesting. This is actually a visual representation of synthesis, and ended up, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I've actually thought about renting it just to see how they did all of this. And this is actually the book Pride and Prejudice, and zombies are kind of a hot topic right now, and they have combined Pride and Prejudice and zombies into Pride and Prejudice and zombies. So I found that really interesting that they had done that, and thought it was worth mentioning that this is an actual visual representation of pulling the ideas from two different things and sticking them in the same one. So let's think about this. You watch television and see Kelly Clarkson singing the national anthem, which was a while ago. So the Star-Spangled Banner combines a poem by Francis Scott Key with the music of an old British club song to create something new. So they've actually synthesized two items to create something new. So what are some questions that you can ask? And I think these are really helpful to help you work on doing your synthesis. So what are the controversies, the problems, or main points in each source? See the word main points? You can see that summary is a part of synthesis. What are the differences between or among sources? So between is if you have two, among is if you choose more than two sources to look at. What are the positions, the stances, the types of evidence provided? So what's the purpose of the article that you're examining? What points, controversies, or problems do your sources have in common? Are there any examples or facts the same or similar? Do the sources refer to each other? Sometimes you'll find that the sources actually refer to each other as you go through and read those. So what are some questions that you can ask to help make the leap from the sources to what you're going to say? So let's think about this for a minute, and let's read this. How do controversies, main points, or problems apply to your research question or thesis? So you're going to think of a working thesis, which means it's not finalized, and start working within that realm. What answers do the sources give about that particular issue that you've decided to explain? Do the sources make points that may indicate your tentative thesis needs to be changed? Note that this is a little bit different. Your tentative thesis is something to get you started on your research, but as you go through your research, you may find that these articles help you formulate a different type of thesis. And that's where those new ideas can come in. So keep that in mind as you're working through this and as you do some of the assignments that I ask you to do where you're thinking about thesis statements, that those can change and that's okay. So how can you present the information in an objective manner to make something more easily understood? The question you're trying to find the answer to. So always start with a question to help you. What conclusions can you draw from the sources? What new ideas have the sources led you to? Sometimes there'll be ideas that you know, but the reader wouldn't know or the peers wouldn't know that you're going to be sharing that information with. Has your research influenced your views in any way? Do your sources raise questions that may need more research? So these are some things to kind of keep in mind as you go through this assignment. So the introduction includes some basic things. One sentence that effectively and academically introduces what you will explain. In this case, it's an explanatory synthesis. So, and that's what you're going to be working on in this initial essay on synthesis. An introduction to the sources the writer is synthesizing. So the writer is actually you in this case, and you're going to talk about what are the sources, and the way to do that is to talk about not just the authors but the titles of your sources. So you're looking at titles and you're looking at relevant background on the subject, the authors, or the topics of the sources. So the body includes a few things too, and you'll want to always follow the rubric on this, but these are some basics that you need to be thinking about as you go through your essay. So tell how the articles are connected to the topic that you're writing about, and remember that sometimes your articles may mold your topic or your thesis. So keep that in mind as well. Include information from more than one source on your topic because you cannot synthesize if you only have one source. Be clear on what information came from where. So according to this article, according to this author, according to, you're always going to want to be very clear. As far as wording in this part, you want to make sure it's very objective. Most of this essay will not have anything but third person. So keep that in mind and follow the rubric on that, you're going to be speaking in third person terms, objective voice, and be very clear where that information is coming from so that it doesn't sound like you're the one telling it. Show similarities and differences in a way that informs and avoids taking a strong position. Explanatory essays are very different than argumentative essays. In argumentative, you would automatically take this strong position. In explanatory, you're simply explaining, just as the word indicates. Okay, so the summary should highlight and remind the reader of the most important themes and topics in the article and tell how the articles are connected to the topic you're writing about. So this concludes the preliminary lecture on synthesis. There's some other supplemental videos. As always, follow the rubric, your rubric that is attached to the assignment. Rather than following any specific directions in these videos, I tend not to re-record them because they already have quality information. But there may be a few differences in the videos that I record from your assignment. So always follow the assignment directions that are current in your class. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you found these videos helpful. Have a nice day.